Ladies and gentlemen, today I am introducing you to a Budgetmon challenge. Now, I was planning on doing this as a competition between myself and either Logitron or Ninja Mudkips. However, they're both really busy guys, and despite all the will in the world, to get a number of battles and to edit them, etc., that takes time, so it's not always going to be possible. So this time, it will just be me, and hopefully at some point in the future, someone else may be able to do this against me. But what it is, you get 2200 points to build an NU team, where base stat equals points, so Glaceon at 525 base stat will cost you a whopping 525 points. So you can see where I'm going with this. And what I'm going to do this time is just set a score and then try it again with a different budget team, set up a leaderboard, find out which budget team is best, and how good budget teams can be against proper and new teams. And I encourage you to try this as well and build your own team and let me know how you got on, because it was a lot of fun to do. So we're scoring, if you win you score 50 points, if you win 2-0 that's 60 points, 3-0 that's 70 points, and so on like that. If you draw you score 20 points, if you lose 20 points, lose 2-0, that's 30 points, lose 3-0, that's 40 points. So let's have a look at my team and how I built it. Now I knew straight away that I was going to have Hippo Coolers in my core. Not only are both absolute bargain prices, but they also provide Stealth Rocks, recovery and phasing from Hippopotas, and Toxic Spikes knockoff and Rapid Spin support from Tentacool. There's also no shared weaknesses, which is always good for a core. Next member of my team was Raticate, because I've always wanted to use Raticate. He brings great speed, one weakness, a priority move, as well as Guts boosted Facade. And surprisingly at 413 he was my most expensive member of my team, although for competitive play 413 is fairly low. Next came Haunter because I needed a solid special attacker. At 405 he's an absolute steal. He is quick, he hits like a truck, and he also provides Rapid Spin immunity. He pairs up well as a Venoshocker for Tentacle's Toxic Spikes, and also provides key immunities to Ground, Normal and Fighting, and good resistances to Grass, Bug and Poison, which slots into my team very nicely. So we have a pretty good foundation for a team here. I wasn't planning on doing this, but I guess you have a free team builder from me today as well. The next two things kinda came together. Pikachu is a Pokemon that I've never used before, but it's really cheap, and with Light Ball it can really pack a punch. It also provides priority and can hit both the physical or the special side, and it also provides a second electrical immunity, which is essential in allowing the final member of the team, Murkrow, who just fills in the gaps because, as you see, I have 1 Dark weakness, 2 Psychic weaknesses and 2 Ground weaknesses, so Murkrow helps to balance the team out a little bit. And with Prankster can also provide some decent team support, so that is my budget team. So in this first game, his team was mostly PU like mine, which was a huge relief not to see things like Golurk or Kadabra. The big worry was going to be Ampharos. Although Pikachu and Hippopotas are immune to electric, I can't really hit Ampharos very hard, whereas he could just hit me with something like Focus Blast in return. Keeping Tentacool alive was actually going to be crucial because it was Heatmore, Dugong, Jumpluff if it's a Cedar and Sandshrew, so let's see how we got on. So the game went fairly well. It seemed I had appropriate counters for all of his Pokemon, and just making the simple switches allowed me to gain an appropriate foothold in the match, until this happened. Ampharos with Agility really threw me off guard, and to compound my difficulties, an error with Pikachu and Murkrow meant they didn't have the abilities I wanted on them. So now there was going to be no way I could Haze or T-Wave with Murkrow, as Ampharos just outspeeds my whole entire team. And with an error, I lost Pikachu, and then I forgot about Ampharos' Focus Blast, and I also lost Raticate foolishly. So things weren't looking good. However, Hippopotas did manage to force the switch, and as soon as I got Stealth Rocks up to his rather Stealth Rocks susceptible team with 4 pokes weak to Stealth Rocks, I was once again able just to, with appropriate switching, to shut down his momentum and bring it back to my side. A good double switch allowed me to put down Sandshrew with Haunter, removing his Rapid Spinner and effectively putting a timer on the game. What with me having Rocks and Toxic Spikes on my opponent's side of the field, that will now prevent how many times my opponent can switch in because he does have a few Pokemon weak to Stealth Rocks. And a very fortuitous switch on a Memento Jumpluff, followed by a very ballsy Whirlwind prediction, effectively sealed the victory for me, because it swung momentum heavily back in my favour. With now walling from Tentacool and Venoshock sweeping from Haunter, that will win me the game. And this was a very dangerous game because it was a classic example of how Surprise can give you a huge advantage, and I really like the combination of Memento Jumpluff allowing Ampharos a free switch to set up. But that is the game, and it was a 3-0 victory in my favour, scoring me 70 points. Now, my second opponent's team was looking more like a standard NU team than the last one. As far as threats go, Roselia could be the biggest problem because it is a grounded poison type, preventing me from effectively setting up my own Toxic Spikes, and so Haunter's effectiveness is obviously reduced. And not much on my team barring Raticate can really touch Roselia just because its special defense stat with a Violet is absolutely crazy, it can take it so well. Also Swallow, if I fail to preserve Hippopotas on a good range of health, then that could be able to do some serious damage on my team, so it could become an uncontrollable threat. So let's see how I get on. So this game was all about predictions, and with Pikachu and Murkrow now sorted out, my team could function at its full budget effectiveness, and the early signs were promising for predictions with a good Pikachu switch, as well as a very nice Tentacool double knockoff, predicting a Volt switch from Electrode, and this allowed me to seriously lower Roselia's defences, meaning the only major pre-match problem has now been solved, and I do question my opponent's play going into Roselia, because apart from going for Sleep Powder or Spikes, I think having both is illegal on Roselia. There isn't much he could really do to Tentacle. Tentacle once again was putting in some really solid work for the team, and just generally being a really big, pain in the ass, to be honest, just walling everything completely. And my opponent made a really nice play here predicting the Haunter switch, and going out into the Swallow just to force me to switch once again. However, I do have the defensive Titan that is Hippopotas, who just eats up hits from Swallows for days. And Hippopotas once again proves his usefulness, as perhaps my opponent wasn't aware that Hippopotas gets Whirlwind, or maybe he thought I'd just go for Earthquake. But I have nothing really to fear from Nidorino. I want to hopefully phase in something like Swallow again just to rack up a bit more entry hazards and force the switch. After a bit of walling, I do manage to catch the incoming Swallow with a Scold, just missing out on the KO, meaning Hippopotas is going to have to come in and take one last hit from this Swallow before it goes down. And a Guts boosted Brave Bird only does 50%, validating my decision in my eyes to go with the Hippo Cool Core, and he goes to a Lomomola, and I predict the Toxic, seeing how much of a problem Hippopotas is to his team. So I went for Trick, trying to catch the incoming Roselia hopefully, but he protects, so I'm going to have to switch. I don't want to give him free reign deciding what he wants to give the choice specs to. So I go to Raticate, seeing that now Swallow is gone. It lines up pretty well against his remaining Pokemon, and I know for a fact that Electro can't take Raticate down in one hit. Raticate has surprisingly decent special bulk, so I can safely go for the Swords Dance and just try and clean up from here. And a combination of Aftermath and Protect stalling means that Raticate can only finish off two Pokemon, one of them being a Lomomola, which is usually a huge problem to deal with. Not for my team, surprisingly. I do have Pikachu and Haunter, but to take it down in one physical hit is still very impressive. However, his remaining Pokemon are remarkably unprepared to deal with a foul play Murkrow, and despite a very impressive 3-turn Protect at the end of the game, that will be the game. With me only losing Raticate, this means it was a 5-0 victory, scoring me a massive 90 points, and I was really pleased with my team's performance and synergy. However, the biggest challenge is still yet to come. Now, my opponent here has got a very threatening team, and this is a proper NU team with some of the most common NU threats and walls around. And this is without doubt my biggest challenge yet, especially after seeing his team makeup that Golurk could well be an attacker, seeing as though he has Torkoal for defensive support. My biggest concern, however, as it always is when I play in NU, is going to be Mashana, the most ridiculously bulky Pokemon who, after a Calm Mind or two, can also be an unstoppable threat. Just out of interest, the difference between our teams could buy you an Arceus, so let's get into it. So this was a classic case of when predicting a lead can give you a big edge, because there is nothing Garbodor can do to Tentacle, and because he led with Garbodor, that means that something else will have to switch in and then become poisoned before Garbodor can come back in to remove my Toxic Spikes. This also allowed me to go for Knockoff to knock off Garbodor's Black Sludge, and also just to rapid spin all his entry hazards away, making the first few Garbodor turns completely useless. However, my opponent made a good play in just bringing in the one Pokemon that enjoys Toxic Spikes in Zangoose. This meant I was forced to bring in Hippopotas early on, just to take a hit, and I didn't want to switch to Haunter on the second one because I honestly thought my opponent would just go for the Night Slash, both just to predict Haunter to come in, and also because Night Slash would KO Hippopotas anyway. I could then safely switch in Haunter, and due to a higher base speed, I could just safely dispatch Zangoose to the Afterlife. From here on in, it seemed pretty straightforward. I could once again bring in Tentacle on Garbodor, and now that he had 2 layers of spikes up, I figured he'd want to preserve them. So I pulled a good double switch out into Haunter on the Golurk switch, and with Zangoose's early demise, I could safely go for Shadow Ball, hitting everything on his team for at least neutral damage. And a common theme by now is that Tentacle is playing a big role once again. It really put in good work across the first 3 matches, shutting down Lapras and safely rapid spinning with Golurk gone. Raticate was able just to take down Lapras with nothing left in his team, appreciating taking a Guts boosted Facade. And the one scare in this match came from the Shell Smash Torkoal. However, Murkrow did what he does best in just nullifying setup sweepers, especially Shell Smashers such as Gorvis and Huntail. And with the threat of Torkoal neutralised, Choice Specs Haunter was able just to clean up his remaining Pokemon, giving me the 4-0 victory, scoring me a very impressive 80 points. Now for my final opponent, when I first saw it I didn't quite know what to think. It felt like a mismatch of just common NU powerhouses and lesser used stuff just chucked together. His team, like my first opponent, is also Stealth Rock susceptible, and also has a remarkable lack of speed to the team, so you would have thought Raticate and Haunter would have had a field day with this team. Well, let's see. Now, having faced a Glalie previously, I didn't know why I didn't just lead straight off the bat with Tentacle once again, and this is where things start to go wrong for me this game. It seems the underlying thought in my mind was always just predicting the Golurk switch at wrong times, and then messing up when it does actually switch in. Fortunately, there was very little Golurk could do to Hippopotas, and when finally I could Whirlwind him out, the same applied also for Scraggy. When finally Glalie was brought in, I was able to switch in Raticate and finish off the Glalie, so things were looking up at this point. I was 6-5 up, and I was starting to think it was going to be business as usual. However, this is where the road to recovery ends, and I can't remember playing a game as bad as I did here. I'm just going to have to chalk this down as just, you know, one of those games, it just happens sometimes. And Scraggy's sheer bulk was giving me problems, and a good play on my opponent's part predicting the tentacle switch, both for the resist and also for the liquid ooze on Drain Punch, meant that I only had one play I could make with Tentacle, and I chose to knock off the Evilite instead of rapid spinning, and although it eventually helped me finish off the Scraggy, it really hurt my team's chances of switching in the long run. And how did Scraggy live a facade with no Evilite and 55% health? That was pretty baffling to me at the time. However, Scraggy's demise meant that in came the only Pokemon that you'll now see in this game, which is Mantine, and I played so badly around this, again, always fearing that Golurk switch. I first thought he would double switch to Golurk, then I thought he'd switch predicting the T-Wave, so I go for Foul Play. Then I switched to Pikachu, expecting a Protect, but Pikachu just goes down as well to a Scald. So I go back to Haunter, expecting a switch, but Protect just screws me over, and at this point I was getting pretty pissed, because once again, I have to switch because a Choice Spec Scald will KO me. So after a long period of Mantine trolling Murkrow, he eventually, you know, just crits me, and that seals Murkrow's fate as well. And at this point it was the game. I could maybe have had at least one chance by going for T-Bolt here, and then switching, sacking Hippopotas on the Golurk switch, and then switching back in and just going for Shadow Ball, because Shadow Ball was my only, way to win this game now, even though I reckon Flareon could probably have lived one Shadow Ball. However, as you'll see, Mantine can live a Shadow Ball comfortably anyway, so that'll be the game, and it was a 4-0 loss, losing me 50 points. And that was actually the only time I've lost with that team since then as well, and all in all I was really happy with the team, not only with how well it gelled as a team, but also how it could compete in the NU meta game. And if you want a challenge, I recommend that you go and do something like this, even try and beat my score. And this just encourages you to use PU unless you use pokes. And I hope you all enjoyed that, I know I did, it was really fun to play. And with that being said, I will see you all next time. Goodbye.